I got the invitation to go on this Armed Lutheran Radio show, though. You know this guy? Have you seen this? There's two things that I would like to say that make me feel safe. Number one, the fact that there is a radio show called the Armed Lutheran Podcast somewhere in the world. That makes me feel safe.
Bringing you law, gospel, and guns. This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Armed Lutheran Radio, a show about guns, hunting, competitive shooting, the natural right of self-defense, and what God's Word says about the issues surrounding gun rights and gun ownership. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, and this is episode number 473. Thank you so much for making Armed Lutheran Radio a part of your week this week, and for those of you who are returning, welcome back. Happy New Year. For those of you who are visiting for the first time, welcome aboard. Glad to have you here. Happy New Year to you as well. Hope everybody had a safe and happy Christmas and New Year's holiday. Today is our annual State of the show. This for 2026. What do we have in store for you in 2026? What can you expect from Armed Lutheran Radio? Well, before I do get into that, I almost forgot. How can I forget? I need to make sure I thank the good people who are making this show possible and have continued to make this show possible for a number of years. The members of the Reformation Gun Club. We don't have any advertising. We don't have any sponsors. We are listener funded. And what that means is that the kind and generous donations of our listeners keep the lights on and keep things going. The members of what we call the Reformation Gun Club, we take we use Give, Send, Go, a Christian crowdfunding website for our donations, handling all of that stuff now. And if you would like to help keep the show going, something we're going to be talking about here shortly, visit reformationgunclub.com or look for a link in the show notes for this or any of our previous episodes that will take you to our donations page at Give, Send, Go. And for any amount is appreciated because we really do appreciate everyone who puts their money where their mouth is. And if you'd like to come join us for our January online hangout, which will be happening in a couple of weeks, visit armedlutheranradio.us, check out the Reformation Gun Club, and come join us. You'll be getting an invitation to join our upcoming hangouts, and look for all that information also in our Facebook page, Fans of Armed Lutheran Radio. So look for that as well. And come join us. Anyway, all right, so enough of all that. What do we have in store for what would be our 10th year? I've been thinking long and hard about this episode and about the answer to that question. It's been a long and winding road over the past 9 years. What started out as a solo podcast turned into a collaboration with some awesome people. Aaron Israel, Sergeant Bill Sylvia, Mia Anstein, and of course, Pastor John Bennett. Then, after COVID and a bunch of other life changes, it slowly devolved back into what is mostly a solo podcast at this point. 2025 only sort of amplified that. It was kind of a tough year. We had just come out of a downsizing at the end of 2024, moved into a smaller place. We're still kind of settling into that. We had sickness and death in the family, and family issues over 1,000 miles away in our native North Carolina. Volleyball for my daughter and all the time and financial investment that comes with those things. Published my third book in the 10 Commandments series, which if you have not seen it, I would recommend if your kids enjoy fantasy adventure with biblical life lessons. check that out. I'll link to those books in the show notes. At work, I was the primary resource for not one, not two, but 3 major projects that were seemingly all trying to go live at the same time. Just absolutely crazy work schedule at times. And thank goodness they did not all go at the same time, but they were still very, very hectic, each one of them. The last one even had me taking time away from my Christmas vacation to fix some stuff. Lots of hours, lots of hard work by everyone involved, and we got all 3 of those projects finished and up and running. Dragged kicking and screaming over the finish line, as one of our project managers described it, and fortunately now they're all running fairly smoothly. And then to round out the year on a high note, actually just a few days ago on New Year's Day, my son got married. So all that said, not entirely sure what 2026 is going to bring. As they say, when man makes plans, God laughs. In addition to all of that craziness, we still managed to release 46 episodes, at least 46. I counted them up. I may have put in some extras, but 46. That's not bad. So, getting back to the original question, what is in store for 2026? The answer to that question was inspired by the very man who helped me kickstart this podcast in the first place 10 years ago. A man who at the time was known as, and still is known as, the Black Man with a Gun, Ken Blanchard. Back in 2015, 2016, when the Armed Lutheran was still just a blog, I was considering starting a podcast. I was listening to shows like Handgun World with Bob Main and The Black Man with a Gun with Reverend Ken Blanchard. And Ken was one that I looked up to and was kind enough to answer my idiotic questions. I liked what he was doing in that he was... I enjoyed Bob's show very much. Those were my 2 favorite podcasts. But I had an idea in my head to do something similar to what Ken was doing in terms of format, in that he had, instead of one topic each week, he would have several different things that he talked about, and he segued from one to another, almost like a produced television or radio show. And he was, as I said, very kind to answer my questions about how to get started and equipment and what to do and blah, blah, blah. Ken was, for those who don't know or are newer to the pro-gun podcasting scene, he was one of the pioneers of pro-gun podcasting, hosting the Black Man with a Gun podcast, which was aimed at promoting both the Second Amendment, but also to undermine and counter the cultural narrative that somehow blacks in America are supportive or should be supportive of gun control. And I reached out to Ken a number of times with questions, and he, as I said, very kind. I was fortunate in the early days to have him as a guest on the show. But back then, he was answering questions from this goober from North Carolina about how to get a podcast started. And at some point, I think he finally got tired of it all. He'd reached the end of his patience. He finally gave me what was the best advice that anyone could have given me. And that was, if you're going to do it, just do it. In other words, stop hemming and hawing around. Stop asking me stupid questions. Just get to it. Or to put it more crudely, crap or get off the pot. And so I did. And some might look back at the past 9 years and say, yeah, that was a lot of crap. But that kind of tough love, the grizzled veteran telling the newbie to stop dilly-dallying and get it done, that was huge. And so here we are. Episode 473, 10 years later, And the question is, what now? And interestingly enough, the answer is inspired by the very same person who inspired me to start all this in the first place. I've had a lot of thoughts about this, thoughts I've wrestled with for a while, over a year now. And now comes the time, once again, to crap or get off the pot. If you're going to do it, just do it. Ken Blanchard's words, as I said, are again the motivator here. Or maybe not the motivator, but sort of the clarifier of my thoughts. Ken has over the years remade himself a number of times from Second Amendment advocate and speaker to podcast preacher to motivational speaker to musician, or bluesician as he would call it, I think. He now has a Substack called The Crooning Chronicles, and I will link to that in the show notes. It's an excellent read. There, Ken shares his thoughts on a lot of things, not just the Second Amendment and not just music. Faith, music, motivation, some cultural issues sprinkled in, personal issues and that sort of stuff, or experiences, I should say. Excuse me, I had to wet the whistle there. But the article that inspired today's episode, and which I think brings everything full circle for me, is entitled, "When the Fight Isn't Fun Anymore, Reflections from a Veteran of the Gun Rights Arena." And in this article, Ken writes, "For 30 years, I fought for the right to keep and bear arms. It wasn't just a cause, it was a war. And like any war, there were casualties. I lost money, I lost friends, I lost family, I lost influence, I lost peace, all for convictions that ran deep and posts that stirred the pot. Gun rights, as journalists say, is evergreen content. It never goes out of style. It doesn't fade with trends. It's always relevant, always polarizing, always profitable for someone. There will always be a pro-group and an anti-group. The argument itself is the industry. It funds organizations, fuels conferences, and drives clicks. But for me, it didn't fund much." That opening couple of paragraphs really struck a chord with me, especially as I worked through the long overdue accounting for 2025. I spent a lot of money in the podcast biz, more than I should have. I can say, fortunately, I didn't lose family or friends over my content or my convictions, thankfully, but I did lose a bunch of money and a lot of time, more importantly. I think back now to the past 9 years and the amount of time spent on podcasts and time spent doing interviews. If you add in the other podcast, Unload and Show Clear, and the 150 some odd episodes I did there, time spent editing and recording and doing interviews and waiting for guests who never showed up for scheduled interviews, and going to conferences and going to pistol matches, and in the end, none of it really made a whole lot of difference. The growth of the show kind of plateaued in 2018. Social media is really not my thing. I hate Twitter. I always have. It's now X. I'm just not willing to sell my soul to be an influencer, whatever that means. I don't want to spend my nights away from home and family anymore, especially now that I'm on the downside of 50 and a couple of years away from being an empty nester. There's no money to pay for much beyond the show's expenses, and time's running thin. I wrote a song last year about kind of inspired by this situation called Like Me. And it's from the perspective of a dying father who finally realizes that he put earthly things and ambition and meaningless things in front of family, and time is now up and all he can do with his final moments is warn his own children not to be like me. I don't want to do that anymore. By the way, if you want to hear that song, again, I'll share a link to Spotify in the show notes. It was released on my last album last year. Back to Ken's article. Gun rights in America shift every 30 years like hurricanes. The cycle repeats. I've been in the arena long enough to see old warriors return, hoping to rekindle the fire, but there's nothing new under the sun. So what happens when the fire dims? When the fight isn't fun anymore? What is your exit strategy? Have you thought about it? How do you bow out gracefully, retire with dignity, or translate decades of experience into something new? Do you stay too long and become the angry old person no one wants to hear? That really struck a chord. The realization that I've had and have been putting off thinking about for a while now is that the fire has dimmed. And I feel like I'm only doing this because I feel obligated to the handful of people who I am supremely grateful for having supported the show financially over the years. But the question I keep coming back to is, are they getting what they paid for? Am I doing something that others are not? Am I doing something that's worth supporting? I don't want, and I've never wanted to become just another gun podcast. I've never wanted to be just about guns. There are plenty of other gun podcasts and lots of people who do it better. I don't want to just be another social commentary podcast. There are tons of those out there and tons who do it better. I don't have the chops to be a theology podcast. I mean, I talk a little bit about those things, but I am not. I don't have I don't have the credentials to be, or the experience or the knowledge to be better than other options out there. I haven't been to the range. I've mentioned this several times. I haven't been shooting in over 5 years. I work from home, so I rarely carry anymore, because when I do leave the house, it's usually to go to some event where carry is not legal. So that means leaving a gun in the car, something that I don't want to do. So I don't carry much. So you can hardly say I'm the Armed Lutheran anymore. That's not to say that doesn't mean that I never carry it. It just means it's not an everyday thing for me. The show's bread and butter, which we established years ago, refuting the left's attempts to make the Bible support gun control, that's kind of melted away. The masks and the true agenda, the masks have come off, and the true agendas have on the left have been made more clear over the years. And now the left doesn't even bother to make those biblical arguments. They've come to the point where they don't even try, and because God has been replaced by government in their lives, and God's law has been supplanted by man-made laws and regulations. They don't even try to convince you from a biblical perspective anymore. The same people who used to make those kinds of arguments and try to put the Bible, make the Bible say what it doesn't, they don't even bother with those kinds of arguments anymore. So we have, over the years, slowly gotten away from that stuff. It's why we don't do those deep dives where we fisk an article or a video, because there's no point in refuting arguments that are 10 years old if nobody's making those arguments anymore? And it kind of gets old to talk about the politics when it's not really what I wanted this show to be. I didn't want this to be a politics show. I've written a number of books over the years. They don't sell very well. Nobody reviews them. The podcast isn't growing. My time's more limited than it ever has been. When I post on social media, I don't know whether there's very little reach. Like 10% of the people who are supposedly followers of the podcast ever actually kind of interact. No, 10% actually are reached, and far less than that. And it's usually just the same people are actually interacting with the posts. So, and I have sold a number of books over the years, especially A Duty to Defend, and I think the book has like 1 review. So even the people who do buy the books don't review it or encourage others to do so. So what am I doing here? That's the question that's been plaguing me for over a year. What am I spending my time on? Ken Blanchard, God bless him, has found a new outlet for his talents in music. It's something that I've dabbled in on a smaller scale and with much less talent over the last couple of years in a different sort of way. He likes blues. I like metal. So it's Ken's article again. Like I said, it kind of struck a nerve. It's like everything's coming full circle. The guy who inspired me to start is now asking me, do you have an exit plan? So with all of that said, I think it's time to finally answer that question. What can you expect from this podcast in 2026? So to honor the good people who value the show and who have been so good as to donate their time and money to make it possible, we're going to continue, but there's going to be some changes. Because of limited time constraints, I can promise you 2 shows a month, at least. I'll try to do more, but can't promise more than that. One of those is going to be our monthly online hangout. The other, as often as possible, is going to be, I'm going to try to get Pastor Bennett involved. The focus going forward is going to be on the people who support the show financially. To show my gratitude for what you and the Reformation Gun Club do to keep things afloat. But that's going to also mean, as that has dwindled over the years, that some things, I'm going to have to change some things about the website and hosting and some of that kind of stuff to try to simplify and cut some costs. But again, focus is going to be on those who value the show enough to put their money where their mouth is. And the goal ultimately is going to be to reach episode 500 and then call it a day. If the support dries up before then, we may call it earlier than that. We'll just have to see. But that's the goal. Get to 500, the drive to 500. So, for you good folks who have been members of the Reformation Gun Club, contributed to the show, thank you so much for all of your support. Let us know what topics you would like to hear us discuss in the coming months. And, stay tuned for announcements about the upcoming online hangouts. And for those of you who have not joined or contributed to the show or who've let your membership lapse, visit reformationgunclub.com or look for a link in the show notes and sign up today and come join us for our next online hangout. So here's to 27 more episodes, raising the glass that you can't see me holding. The glass of water. 27 more episodes, maybe more, maybe less, we'll see. But whatever it is, I hope you'll join me. I look forward to it. Until we meet again for episode 474, keep shooting, keep praying. We'll talk to you next time.
For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. Check out the Facebook page, The Armed Lutheran, or join our Facebook group, Fans of Armed Lutheran Radio. If you like what you hear, please leave us a comment on our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback or a review on iTunes and let us know what you think. Thank you for listening to Armed Lutheran Radio.